Reading 74 from the Psychological Commentaries on the Teaching of Gurdjieff and Ouspensky by Dr. Maurice Nicoll, Volume 3, Great Animal House, April 19th, 1947. On Psychological Thinking. When people no longer believe in greater mind and the existence of any form of knowledge and truth higher than materialism and what is evident to the senses, they are mentally shut. One characteristic of a shut mind is the absence of magnetic center. In that case, no influences apart from those of the life of the world can be received, because then the first necessary receptive apparatus is missing. The mentally defective person, in this sense, cannot either let a ray of light into his inner darkness or ever change the relationship between personality and essence. Life must remain his neutralizing force. That is, no reversal within him can take place. He remains, to use a phrase of the work, an unfinished house. Now, the work says that we must create our lives. It also says repeatedly that its teaching is to make us think for ourselves. Can we suppose, then, that we can create our own lives if we have never thought for ourselves? Everyone, on reflection, can see that the human mind, by its mechanical way of working, contributes to its own early enslavement. That is, it very easily forms acquired habits of thought, associations, attitudes, borrowed beliefs, opinions, and so on. So it fixes itself at an early age, unless impressions are taken in voluntarily. A person fixed in this way does not think for himself and cannot therefore create his own life. If we follow general views and standards and conventional family or racial opinions, etc., we do not create our own lives. Life creates our lives. If everyone had reached his inner goal and had become conscious in real I instead of in the many acquired eyes of personality, then he would have created his life. He would be a house completed, or as the work puts it quite simply, he would be a man and not a machine. Today we can watch on all sides machines trying to do, not men trying to do. But it is better to observe the continual struggle in oneself between more mechanical and more conscious eyes. More conscious eyes, that is, eyes that wish to grow, to remember, to understand for themselves and form deputy steward, are kept down, often sternly, by mechanical or dead eyes with old voices, corpses in one's time body. It is a mistake to sacrifice psychological thinking. It is an ever-repeating tragedy in the world of sleeping humanity that psychological understanding is put to death by logical and literal thinking. This is one meaning of the crucifixion. You can see all through the Gospels that Christ was teaching psychological thinking, something new. That was why he used parables and not commandments of stone. John the Baptist could not understand him because he was of the old, literal, dogmatic, harsh, merciless school, and so clad in camel's hair and leather. For what you are clad in means, in psychological language, what truth you wear, what your mind wears. Now, no one can create his own life unless he can reach the level of psychological thinking. 4 mind levels are given in the work: greater mind, psychological thinking, logical thinking, illogical thinking, superstition, for example. In many ancient symbolic drawings of man, he is first represented as lying asleep on the ground, horizontal. At the last, through the operation of a third force, different from life, he is represented as standing up with his eyes open. But to stand on one's feet and to awaken, that is long work, and if a man cannot even begin to think psychologically, it will be impossible. He will insist on everything being put down for him in black and white so that the logical formatory mind can get hold of it. He will not jump to catch the rope overhead, but will make requirements. But no one has ever reached a higher level of being by means of that interpretation of one's meaning on earth, given by the formatory center. One might almost say the reverse, namely that formatory thinking, so much taught and emphasized today, can pull down the level of being. What does psychological thinking mean? In the first place, it has 3 forces in it, while formatory logical thinking has 2. In the second place, it is not seated in the moving parts of centers, but in the higher divisions, turned towards higher centers themselves. To free ourselves from the laws we are under on this planet, inevitably, a man, a woman, must think differently. Yes, think differently from all ordinary life thinking. It is so easy just to think as everyone thinks. Mob thinking is easy, whatever your social mob is. But to think for yourself, to begin to create your life, is only possible through utterly new ideas. This is the function of esoteric knowledge, to make a man think in a new way. Mere reaction to life thinking is useless. To become a radical in opposition to a Tory, etc., etc., is not thinking in a new way. Merely to go against everything your parents taught you is not thinking in a new way. It is life thinking, pendulum thinking, in terms of the opposite, that the pendulum is always ticking between. That is not new thinking, nor can it produce in us ideas and thoughts that can create our lives, that is, lead to the master, that is, real I, entering the carriage and telling the driver where to go. Now, the idea of the conscious circle of humanity, the idea of greater mind, or to put it in terms of the Gospels, the kingdom of heaven, that is a new idea belonging to creating one's life. Connected with this, and oppositely, the idea that man is asleep on this planet and can do nothing unless he awakens, that he is definitely hypnotized, is a new idea. Again, the idea that one has no real I is a new idea. The idea that man, that is you, is not properly conscious, the idea of being identified and so asleep, and all the teaching connected with it, the idea that man, that is, you, is governed by negative emotion, all this is knowledge that really makes a person with magnetic center begin to think in a new way. That is, it leads to mitvoi, change of mind. This makes the possibility of creating one's life, and only such ideas coming from a higher level of being can alter us and create a new person. That is, only contact with the third force of the work, the influences coming from conscious man, from greater mind, and thinking from the ideas given by them, can enable a person to create his life. Now, the ideas, the knowledge coming from greater mind, cannot be understood logically. On that level, they are split into opposites, into contradictions. Logically, a thing is either right or wrong. Psychologically, it can be either right or wrong, relatively. Relative thinking, in the work sense, means thinking of the part in relation to the whole. To think relatively, it is said, one must know something of all before one can think of a detail, a part. The ray of creation, for example, gives us our earth in relation to all, to the whole ray, and this at once alters our thought of the earth. Now, to think of yourself from yourself is one thing, but to think of yourself from what the work teaches is another thing. To think of yourself from what the work teaches is to begin to think psychologically.